Welcome to the Immigration Clarity Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Immigration Clarity Podcast, brought to you by Andrade, Barbosa, and Santos LLC. On this show, we break down complex immigration issues so individuals and families can better understand their options. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today I'm joined by attorney Joceline Andrade, a partner at the firm who focuses on family-based immigration and removal defense. And today, we're discussing what the most common immigration paths are and how they actually work in practice. So, some good stuff to cover here. Joceline, it's great to see you.
Good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. And let's start by I'm going to ask you just to share a bit about your background. This is the first of many podcasts, so you don't need to give us the full story, but, a little bit about your background and also the kind of immigration work you focus on today, you and or the firm generally. That'd be super helpful.
Sure. So I am an immigration attorney. I have been practicing since 2014, so a little bit over 10 years. My background is a bit interesting. So I started my immigration work working for the U.S. government. I first clerked for an immigration judge, for a few immigration judges in Dallas, Texas, at the immigration court there. I did that for about 2 years. My role mainly was to draft decisions for judges, so I was sort of like their right hand. So I sat through a lot of hearings. I learned a lot about the law of immigration. After that process, I actually worked for Department of Homeland Security as one of the attorneys representing the U.S. government in immigration court. I did that for about 3 years and learned a lot. It was a really learning on the job type of work, which was very interesting work as well. I worked under both the Obama administration and a little bit under Trump 1.0. And from there, I did decide to go into defense work, which is really my passion. And that began in 2020. I worked for a firm here in Rhode Island for about 4 years. And from there, I decided to launch my own practice. I have two partners, Nelly de Barbosa and Kelvin Santos. Our firm mainly focuses on removal defense and family immigration. We represent lots of respondents who are facing deportation, lots of people who are detained by ICE, which we know that's happening very frequently. So that's a lot of our clients. But we also represent lots of people who are trying to get status through family members. So that's really what our practice is mainly focused on.
Oh, super helpful. Good to hear. Super interesting, too, that you spend so much time on the government side of things. And now often it sounds like you may be in opposition to that. Right. But it's nice to have, in any endeavor, that kind of full circle perspective. Right. When you talk about immigration paths or paths to immigration, someone's trying to figure out their options. What I don't know if there's a hierarchy or, what tends to come up most in these conversations?
Sure. I mean, it really depends. Before we had, Trump 2.0, as we call it, many people were coming through the U.S. border. And a lot of those individuals that cross the border usually seek asylum. Asylum is for people who are afraid to return to their home country. Generally, they fear some type of what we call persecution if they were to return. Unfortunately, many of these people, though, they are fleeing usually, it might be just the economy in their country is struggling, so they seek a better life in the United States. But their only basis to try to fight their case is usually asylum. However, when it's simply economic, the chances of getting asylum is extremely low. Other options are for people, for example, who are here in the United States. They get married to a U.S. citizen. Their spouse can petition for them so that they have a path to one day become a citizen themselves. People who have also adult children can petition for them. If the child is over 21, in that case, you generally need a legal entry. So if you have crossed the border, it makes it a little bit more complicated because you need what we call a waiver. But also what we see a lot, there are people who qualify for something that's called the cancellation of removal. That's people who have been in the United States for over 10 years, have not committed any crimes, and they have children or spouses or even parents that have legal status, like lawful permanent residency status or citizenship. And they're able to show that those family members would suffer hardship, which is a high standards, extremely difficult to win, but that is something that's few people do qualify for if they are facing deportation in court. Immigration is very complicated. There's lots of
Yeah.
avenues to try to get status. Um, so it's always better to speak with someone, with an attorney who can advise you what your best path is.
Right. That's I wasn't. I mean, I was aware of some of those, and less so others. But that interesting scenario where you've been in the States just for a dozen years, 15 years, supporting a family, but you're undocumented. Would that be the right term?
Yes, it is the correct term.
Right. And so you're undocumented, but you're the main breadwinner in the family, maybe, and all that. And so that's a high bar. But if it's all in place there, that's another path in. That's interesting. What about family-based immigration? You mentioned that earlier, I think.
Yeah.
Who usually qualifies for that route?
So as I indicated, if you, for example, if you came in with a tourist visa and you decided, I don't want to return to my country, I want to remain in the United States, and you do stay in the United States, and then you meet someone, you fall in love, and you decide to get married, and this person is either a lawful permanent resident or U.S. citizen, that person can begin the process of assisting you in getting documents. It's a lengthy process, can take a couple of years, but it is definitely a path to getting legal documents in the United States. Another family-based, as I said earlier, if you have a child who's over 21, that child could petition for you. And again, if you entered with a visa, it's a pretty straightforward process. If you did not enter with a visa and you cross the border illegally, it's much more complicated because of the need for a waiver. And to qualify for a waiver, you need what we say a qualifying relative, which is generally a spouse with legal documents or parents. Your child would not help you qualify for that waiver.
I see.
And same with if you came in illegally and you do have a spouse. Let's say you didn't come in with a visa, you crossed the border illegally, you marry someone who's a U.S. citizen, for example. That process also not as straightforward because you would need a waiver as well. And it just means that it's a lengthier process to status and you would have to return to your country before you can legally come back. But it is a path to legal status in the United States.
I see. I'm not confused, but I need clarification, I think, about the petitioning for a child or on behalf of a child. So this is a scenario where I'm living in the States. I'm here, possibly, I'm not a citizen. I'm possibly here illegally. I'm undocumented. And this child is back where we originally lived in El Salvador, or is this a child that I had here and is now over 21?
Sure. So it'd be a child that you had here who's over 21, or a child who maybe they had their own process. Maybe they came in as a teenager and now they've, got legal status through some other process. They could petition
Okay.
for you once they are a U.S. citizen.
I
So you
see.
have to be over
Okay, thank
21
you.
and also a U.S. citizen to petition for a parent.
What are some situations where someone might already be in the U.S. but still has a path to adjust their status?
There's lots of situations.
Yeah.
If you are, a lot of it depends on how you enter the United States. Again, if you enter with a visa and you marry somebody, you can get legal status. If you were maybe a victim of a crime, there's something called a U visa that you could apply for that has a path to getting legal residency. There's something also called VAWA, adjustment of status, which is for people who are married to someone who's a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident, and that person, committed domestic violence against them. That's also a process that you could possibly obtain legal status through. There's lots of different options. The asylum process is also one of them. If you are able to win an asylum case, after a year, you are able to apply to get your legal residency in the United States.
I talked to enough attorneys to know that the answer to most questions is it depends. But But I'm thinking about, do you see or can you identify the biggest factors that affect whether someone actually qualifies for a specific immigration path? And I was making a joke about that because obviously it depends on which immigration path we're talking about. But maybe you could give a couple of top line, this one, that one, this one, that one.
So, well, let's say somebody comes in for a consultation, correct? There are certain main things that we want to know. How did you enter the country? Are you married? Are you married to a U.S. citizen? Are you married to a lawful permanent resident? Do you have any children in the United States? Are they U.S. citizens?
Mhm.
Have you ever been a victim of a crime? Because again, for the U visa, little
Right.
things that gives us a little clue of which way we should head on the
Right.
line of questioning.
Oh, that makes sense. Right. So if they're from a country that is in the news as awful on human rights or as an active war zone or whatever it might be, that's like, oh, okay, there's an option.
Right. Or like
Um,
the question in that case would ask, like, are you afraid to go back to your country? Or
right.
did anything happen in your country that makes you afraid to go back or makes you feel like you are safe here in the United States? So these are different types of
Yeah.
questions
Right.
for us to kind of gauge which path you possibly qualify for.
I get it. What about you mentioned I think it was the UVs, or maybe not, but I'm a victim of a crime. Am I a victim of a crime here in the United States, or am I a victim of a crime in my home country?
So for the U visa, you'd have to be a victim of a crime in the United States.
Got it.
And
That's
generally,
that's what I thought. I just wanted to.
right. So and generally you would need to cooperate with the police department. So
Mhm.
um let's say you were the victim of like a very serious assault, like a felony assault. I know a lot of immigrants are afraid to reach out to the police, especially given everything that's going on. But we always recommend that
Right.
if you are a victim of any crime, definitely, exercise your rights, call the police. And if the case is something that could help you get a U visa, it helps that you contacted the police and you worked with the police because the police has to sign off on a form that says that you were helpful in
Ah,
resolving that case.
got it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's almost like a character witness at that point. Um, what about, and you were mentioning the different, the intake questions and, a little bit of sort of low level investigative work you do to figure out like, what would be the most likely route to go with this individual? I'm thinking that there's probably scenarios where there's multiple options. How do you choose which is the better fit, or do you do one and then if you get shut down, do you do the other, or is that a no-no?
So generally, if somebody, it's rare that somebody qualifies for more than one thing. But if they
Oh,
do, yeah, it's actually rare. Most cases, people don't qualify for anything. That's what's tough with the immigration process. That there's just not many avenues for people. So it is rare when somebody actually qualifies for multiple avenues of relief. In that scenario, generally, I would recommend to apply for both. Um, or for whatever you qualify for, because with immigration, something might take a year to process. Um, but then things switch. Something that used to take a year is now taking several years. So we just don't know how long the
mm,
process might take. So I would recommend apply for both and let's just see which one gets you the faster results. As long
right.
as one doesn't affect the other relief. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I mean, it's counterintuitive to me, honestly, that you could file a couple of uh, requests or, file out the paperwork for two different options. But I suppose it's just because they're handled by different uh, divisions, if you will.
They're handled by different divisions. They have different requirements. In one department might just be processing things quicker than another one. For example, asylum cases can take years to be processed, right? So you might have that
Hmm.
pending, and then all of a sudden you marry a U.S. citizen. I'll recommend do that because that's also an easier route to getting documents. Like apply for that as well,
Ah,
and let's see where which one moves quicker, which one gets you the benefit you're looking for quicker.
mhm. Do you think that given your background, we just have a couple of minutes left here, but given your background that you described at the beginning, in term, you've had several years of experience, a bunch of years in on the government side of things and working for uh, various offices. Has that given you a real leg up in navigating some of this stuff for your clients? Because I'm guessing that experience is fairly unique.
It is unique, and I do think that it does give me a little bit of a leg up. I do think, especially for the removal cases, the cases in immigration court, so I can generally do really well with knowing how the government will attack a case. So I can better prepare for a case, right? I can, because I've been on the other side. I know which questions, what holes are in your application that I can attack. So that helps me really prepare my clients better than someone that doesn't have that experience. I know what the judges are looking for, but I
Yeah.
also know what the government attorney, whose job is to essentially act as a prosecutor, to try to say that you don't qualify for such relief, or you're not deserving of the green card. But my role, given that background, I can advise somebody or prepare somebody on how to answer certain questions more thoroughly than somebody that does not have that experience.
No, that's great. I love that. Well, we're out of time, Joceline, and but I know we'll talk again. I look forward to seeing you again on a future episode. Thanks so much for sharing your passion and your expertise.
Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you.
You bet. That's it for today's episode of the Immigration Clarity Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Andrade, Barbosa and Santos LLC, or speak with someone about your situation, you can visit their website, abslawllc.com. Thanks for listening. I'm Sean O'Connor. Do us a favor, subscribe, share, or leave a review so more people can get the clarity they need on this very important issue. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.